Arsenal supporter, I'm delighted to welcome Will Walsh to you in your business studio. Hi,
Hi,
Will.
Alec. Hi. Thanks a million.
Great to meet you, Will. We won't talk about Arsenal because I know
No,
you
no,
feel
not too much to talk
that.
about.
But that's fine. We all have our problems.
Have a crosses to bear.
Yeah, we do, don't we? As you know, I love taking people back to their last year in school and kind of finding out were they the academic or were they the sort that just wanted to get in, start working immediately and start earning money.
Yeah, very much. I'd always worked as a summer job type of thing as a young lad. I'd always taken a job during the summer holidays, particularly during the sort of secondary school years. Um, so you'd be working June, July, August, and then back into school in September. So yeah, I always enjoyed working, and then of course as a young man to have a few quid in your pocket is great, and it's great to be able to bring a girl out and have a bit of crack.
Yeah, it's very hard to get away from the addiction you get it and the
Yes,
independence it brings.
yes, indeed. It's very enjoyable.
So, okay, were you working for the same company during these school breaks, or were you moving around a bit?
Yeah, no, I was working for the same company. It was a well-known international company, a hair care. They were a German company, but they were international. They were all over the world, and some
Sure.
very strong brands people would remember. Things like Shockwaves or Silver Cream or Wella shampoo. It was always the product was excellent. And I used to go in as a young lad into the warehouse. I'd be picking orders, I'd be packing orders, I'd be loading vans. And I suppose for Wella, it allowed their normal workers to take their vacation during the summer. So I'd be filling the gap that was left.
You must have
So
been you must
sorry.
have been a fairly responsible teenager that they had you back year after year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't, when you're a young lad, you don't think like that, I suppose. But I always tried to do a good job, and there was always a place for me the minute I was finished school. Like I was almost guaranteed work. So I went in there after all of my exams. You do your exams, and I went in thinking, oh, here was another 12 weeks of summer work before I get a real job.
Right.
And I went in June and left about 20 years later.
Okay, there's commitment. So they're obviously doing something right for you. And the great thing about going into an international company is it's usually the structures. And if you can find somebody to take you under their wing, even better.
Very much so. Obviously, the MD, he must have seen something, Alec. He called me into the office shortly before the term would have finished, the 12 weeks would have finished, and said, look, we'd like to offer you a permanent position. And of course, being a young man, you're thrilled. And as I said, I never intended it to be, I don't think you'd think that way, funny enough, at that age, about a long-term career. It's a job and you take it and it's great. But so I went in and slowly then this managing director started to put more and more responsibility onto me. And I was doing more and more tasks and different tasks, more important tasks. Shortly after, sort of within 2 or 3 months, I was in the office. Then you were moving through the ranks, credit control, not credit control, sorry, stock control. You did a bit of everything. And telephone sales then became a feature. Then I started looking after some of the wholesale accounts, which would be the larger accounts for that business. Then you progress to calling out to meet these customers and doing a bit of selling to these guys.
Did they have any sort of training structures in processes there?
Yeah, kind of you learned by experience, Alec.
Right.
You kind of learned what worked. Nothing too formal. You get a bit of guidance and particularly if you screwed up, you get a bit of guidance.
Nice way of putting it. Yeah. No, it's fantastic because in an organization like that, and it was compact enough, you get an opportunity to have so many experience around different aspects of the company itself.
Yeah. I mean, you get an opportunity to, firstly, you can see everything that's going on. You get a great understanding of what's going on, and you learn and you learn. I love that whole experience of being able to learn and approach different jobs. And it was always, I want to know how to do that. I want to know how to do that. And then as I evolved as a young man, I was always looking to see where I could improve things and where I could make change process and improve efficiencies. Something that's stuck with me all of my life, actually.
And I think a great thing also about small firms like this, I mean, they're international, but small in the sense of scale where they were in Ireland, is that you see where your contribution is fitting into the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, and you can see where you make changes and you can make effect, and you get noticed. It's funny enough you say it was small. It was small enough in the realm of the organization globally, but our head office was the UK. You start to be, you become visible over there, and then, if they want to solve a problem, they're looking for you. And then as they're implementing changes and new technology and advancements in computer systems, you become the go-to guy. Well, let's go. Let's talk to Will because we know we'll get it sorted, or we know we'll get the process in place because he'll do the right things.
It seems like they were an organization had what we call today self-leadership, but allowing people to be able to express themselves and come up with solutions for the organization.
Yeah, it was very much encouraged, and as I indicated earlier with the MD, a very good MD, so he very much let you take the lead, let you develop, and take responsibility. And I suppose it was less for him to worry about, Alec. If there was somebody good and functioning and doing the job, and then let them off. It's something else you don't have to worry about.
Yeah. And so you were progressed through the firm. I mean, over the course of 20 years, you had got to probably try out nearly every job that was there. So how did you find that? And also in terms of, because you would have built up friendship with a lot of people at your level, but as you went up through the organization, how did that relationship type work, or how did you have to manage it?
Yeah, well, I think it's never a popularity contest, and business can be tough. And as a rising star, to put it that way, you will get people nibbling at your heels. And I think an international company as well, by its very nature and size, can have a lot of politics going on, particularly in the larger organization. In the UK, for example, where it'd be a couple of hundred employees. Everybody's trying to swim to the surface. So, there'd be plenty of people trying to steer your life by in your life jacket, But yeah, you learn, you grow, you learn how to cope, you learn how to deal with people. And I was always very respectful of seniority and experience and people that had the experience and knew what they were talking about. And you get to recognize that very quickly.
It's nice that you were part of an organization that recognized the talent within, as opposed to often there's people, they're dragging in people from outside and you suddenly realize they're not a fit at all and they're causing chaos in the place.
Yeah, well, that can happen, and it did happen, and you would see it, and the first thing you'd see, unfortunately, is you start losing good people.
Yeah,
because they just won't stick around. But I think that happens everywhere, and companies sometimes need to really think carefully about, particularly at senior level, about appointments.
You were talking about part of what you were learning with the whole thing was to get out and start meeting the customers. The great news is for people who want to get into the world of sales, it's nice to have your journey mapped out with people who actually are quite happy to see you initially, how did you find that? And then you obviously had to find new customers out there.
Yeah, well, as I indicated, initially I started talking to some of the leading, the bigger clients on the telephone, and you start to build a bit of a rapport with them without ever having actually seen them. And so then when you went out to meet them, it was great because it was always that face, to face the voice and all of that. And you were always very well received. And, I always made sure that I had some amazing offers to dazzle them with. And I was always very keen, particularly in the early days when, as a young lad, you'd be sent out and you knew it was a challenge and you were being sent out to test your mettle. And to be able to bring back an order that might be 4 times larger than the normal one was always a major. I always got great joy out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the skills missing with so many people who get involved in their business, which we'll come on to shortly on, but is the ability to get out and sell and understand what's involved in that.
Yes, but I still think that the personal relationship thing is so strong, and people will take a chance on you if they believe in you and if they trust in you, and you're reasonable with them, and they if they have confidence in you, they'll know you're not trying to stick them, and they know you're around and you're there for the long haul. You're not a kind of a flash in the pan, load it up and you're gone and they never see you again. That was never my approach.
Yeah, and it's about forming long-term
Yeah,
relationships.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of working with Well, you were there a long time, 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, that relationship was always going to come to an end at some stage. Um, so, what was on the horizon for you then?
Yeah, well, the business was actually it was sold. Procter and Gamble was a major international company bought the company, so there was some redundancies and there was plenty of wheelbarrows of cash flying around for different people. So
Sure.
yeah, you have to take a view, and so sometimes you reach the end, and you do reach the end, and you know that it's time for another challenge. So I decided to branch out and try. So I always like to test myself, Alec, and
Yeah.
try something. I had got enough confidence at that stage to say, well, yeah, look, I can do something. So I got involved in retail. I took a license on a Texaco service station and ran it for a couple of years and ran it very well. It has a high burn rate, that industry. Retail is tough, and anybody that's listening today will be laughing as I say this, but like retail is a really hard business. It can be a very rewarding business, but it's tough and it's long hours. And I did well, but I had family commitments. I had a new son at the time. He was growing up, and
Sure.
I wasn't going to be the dad that was never at home. I wanted to go to football matches. I brought him to see Arsenal. um, I got
Nice.
him. Yeah. Yeah, look, it ran its course. I got what I wanted out of it, proved I could succeed in a completely new vertical. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to try another one. So I went back.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that a lot of people get involved in retail, but don't understand that virtually all retail is nearly a 24/7 sort of commitment
Yeah.
from the beginning. And there's a lot
Right.
of hard work in it.
It's hard. And I remember Alec, a guy, a colleague said to me one day, he said, we have our own television program. And I was kind of looking at him like he had two heads. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, we have our own television program. It's called Crime Watch. And, you know, and I laughed, but actually, it wasn't far from the truth. It's a tough game. It is a tough
No, it is. There's all
game.
sorts of things about cash management
Yeah,
and security and all sorts of
yeah,
things. Yeah, no. I think anybody who's in that sector knows fully well there's severe challenges around it. And by the way, it's not for everybody.
no,
It really is not.
no,
You
no.
know,
It takes a certain breed, and to be fair to all of the retailers out there, they've done an amazing job during COVID and this period.
yeah,
Some places and some people have shone really brightly. You know.
yeah. It's interesting how virtually all payments are nearly contactless now, which
Yeah,
removes a lot of
yeah,
cash out of the system, which is
yeah.
great on the long term
Yeah,
front. For
it's amazing what can happen in with you know change that would have taken 10, 15 years to get through to the end has happened in weeks.
yeah.
It's absolutely been transformative and out of needs must.
Yeah, no. Well, listen, this is the lesson we learn in business when running business, that you need to be sort of agile and you don't know what's coming down the track towards you. But again, you're a typical entrepreneur that I meet in the sense of I'll do something and then I'll do something else. And
Yeah.
then there's going to be another future. And this is where we go. So, okay, retailing wasn't for you eventually. And I can understand that from a family point of view. So, where do you look around to find the next opportunity?
Yeah, and that is absolutely a challenge, Alec. And as you get older as well, you are aware of that little man sitting on your shoulder saying, "Aha, you're getting older, guy. You maybe you won't make it."
Hmm.
Um, And I chose not to listen to him, and I decided to go back and revisit what I had been successful with before, which was always IT systems, software. As I mentioned earlier, I was always at the front when there was a new change coming or a new system being implemented, or you know, a network being put in, or wherever it was. I was always at the front, and I went back to did a bit of re-educated myself, did a sales marketing course. Through that, I met an individual who had a software startup not too far from here in Drogheda.
All right.
And he asked me to get involved. Actually, I went in on a voluntary basis initially, just to test the water. Could I do it? Could I cut it? Could I make it? And I gave that a 3-month period, and that was quite successful. And so much so that they asked me to stay on, which again kind of reminded me of my old director who, after the school work, said, "Oh, we'd like to offer you a position." It kind of felt like that all over again, but here it was 25 years later.
Yeah.
And so I worked for that software company for a couple of years selling their software. And that business is it's a never changing business, and a lot of opportunities in that business, and you got to, if you can succeed in that business, you'll do well. And I moved around within the industry, moving, not too often, but made a couple of changes, and that kind of led me to where I am today.
Right.
I was acting as a software seller, and I came across Inchip. I met the founder, Adrian, Adrian Keelan, who's an accountant by profession. It's his brainchild, and he presented the product to me. I saw it. I completely understood all of the pain points it was solving,
Right.
having had that 20 years of corporate life where I could see that whole process of what happens when suppliers sent in invoices and having invoices approved, and we had to send our invoices to our head office in the UK. So I could see all of that chain and all of that manual work that's involved in getting invoices processed. So when I saw his solution, I went, wow, if I was still in the corporate world, I would be buying this product immediately. So
Right.
then I knew. I was smiling and I said, yeah, I can sell this because I know what it does. So I started to sell it as a reseller, did very well, sold quite a lot of product. In about 12 months, after about 12 months, Adrian came back and said, look, I really want to grow this business. I want to ramp up. I think you're the man. And he offered me the position. So I took over as the managing director. And I'm happy to say, Alec, that we have grown the business incredibly well in the 2 years that I've been there. It's gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, it's amazing because, as you identified, you'd always got an interest in technology, and to suddenly find yourself coming from school times through an organization that would have used this technology had it been around back then, to a situation of now selling it as a reseller and then ultimately taking over as managing director. It's quite interesting, that journey.
It is. It's been remarkable. When I look at it, it's sometimes, when you fall into something that's correct, it's like putting on a nice pair of old shoes. It just feels very comfortable and very right, and you can feel very confident because you have something good. You can make a difference, and when you show people, and I love when we go to demos. And as a managing director or a couple of the finance team are sitting on the table, and there's a light bulb moment after about 10 minutes. For the first couple of minutes, they're looking at you going, is this guy serious? Can he really do what he's saying he can do? And then there's a sort of a light bulb moment where they suddenly get it. And, for any business out there that has a couple of hundred invoices coming in, they'll know what I mean when I say there's a lot of pain in the manual processing of these invoices. There's a lot of labor, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of things can go wrong. You can lose the invoices, the storage, the 7 years archiving. All of this can now just be done at the click of a button. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it never ceased to amaze me how resistant actually so many people are out there to new technology that can make life so much simpler. What would you think would be the key to resistance, and why people
I
don't
think,
see it straight away?
yeah, I think possibly, there's a lot of resistance to software generally. Sometimes people don't understand it. Sometimes the people are afraid of it. They don't understand it. There's a lot of Me Too's. There's a lot of stuff out there that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So how do you know as a business owner what's the wheat and the chaff? Um, so I think this goes back to something we touched on earlier about your social skills, your networking, your trust, your reliability, and you sort of build a brand around yourself, and people get to know you, and they sort of say, well, yeah, if Will says it's okay, well then maybe I'll have a look at it. And I always have stood over everything I've ever sold or did, and I've walked away from places that couldn't deliver in terms of the customer satisfaction, or that were bad at delivery in terms of a customer project. That's not where I want to be. I want to be able to put my hand on my heart and say, listen, this works.
Yeah, and that's quite interesting because again, what you've discovered is a product that you have obviously a particular love for,
Mm.
but not alone that appreciate what it actually delivers. And this unfortunately doesn't happen in some companies where they bring in salespeople who are just out trying to crunch numbers, but have no passion or understanding of really what the real benefits of a product are.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to be passionate. You have to. I'm just only Friday. I said it to somebody. If you love what you do, it's not work. And I never feel I'm working. I am having a ball, because when I sell this product into a business and they see what we can do and they get the benefit, and the return on investment is practically instant.
Right.
I've gone into organizations, Alec, that have 100,000 invoices coming in, and they've an army of people processing, manually working, and you can just go in and transform that business. And that never means a redundancy, by the way. That's always a redeployment, because those people now can actually start doing clever stuff, the stuff that they were employed to do.
Yeah.
Bashing data and data entry and clunky invoices, bashing them into an ERP system or an accounting software system is really not what they trained for. It's not what they came out of college for, and they don't have a great interest in it. So you
No.
give them some real work, where they have to use their brains. You get much better results, and they'll appreciate the fact that they don't have that drudge and that, oh God, I have a pile of paper on my desk, and the MD is going bananas because he's looking for financial reports tomorrow, and I'm never going to have it ready.
Yeah.
Look, there's solutions out there, so it doesn't need to be like that.
Yeah. And it's amazing how many organizations out there that don't seem to recognize that these solutions are there.
It's staggering, and I meet amazingly talented business owners and business leaders and entrepreneurs and really smart guys. And I do sometimes wonder, because the solutions exist. Uh, you or I, Alec, as a business owner, when we have a month end, we want to know that day, if or that evening, or certainly by the next morning, what's the current state of play? Where am I at? Am I ahead? Am I behind? And there's businesses out there even today, Alec, that are closing at the end of the month, and the reports come back 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Here's your financial statement for August. And you're going, hang on, it's October. I didn't realize I'm insolvent for the past 3 months.
It is amazing that knowledge is key to running any business, and I'm always fascinated by companies that don't have that knowledge to hand when it's available by route of technology.
Yeah, look, I mean, this day and age, you have to be able to put your finger on a button and get an answer, and more so now. If you think about it now, Alec, these offices have been empty for 6 months. I guarantee you there's a lot of offices where if you open front door tomorrow, there's a pile of invoices behind the letter in the hallway. Now that's how do you can't run a business like that. And what happened to the suppliers? How did they get paid? What are they? What message are they being given?
Yeah.
We didn't pay what we actually.
You mentioned something which
Say, go on.
yeah, No, you mentioned to me something which amused me. Somebody comes on to a company and says, "I'll tell you what, we're going to do you a favor. We're going to send you invoices by PDF." I like, tell me, remind our listeners about that one.
Well, I'm sure, and this again, you talk about light bulb moments, but you'll get suppliers who, the best will in the world, they'll ring up somebody in the accounts department and they'll say, "Hi, Mary or John, whoever it is, say, hi, we'd like to send you our invoices now by email. Really efficient. We won't have to send you paper invoices anymore." And generally, the response on the other end of the phone is, "Oh, sure, that's marvelous. Why not? Fire them into me by email. Great." And what happens then is the emails come in, and what does Mary or John do? They print them in your office using your equipment and your ink, and the supplier has just transferred a cost. And PricewaterhouseCoopers actually did a survey on this, that it's about €4 of a cost they've just transferred into your office. And so, yeah, you've always got to be aware of what's going on. It's a very interesting stats actually. The Pricewaterhouse survey, it said it was about €4 for a company to send out an invoice. And if you think about that, it's the cost of printing it, paper, envelope, stamp, blah blah blah. And then on the other end, on the receiver end, it's a similar cost, because now you have to handball this paper document coming into your office. It has to go around the office. It has to get signed off. It has to get checked. It's matched to a purchase order, or it's matched to something. Somebody has to approve it. And then somebody data entries the invoice and the data back into your own account system. So it's a very inefficient way of running a business. Now that there is a solution out there that will take about 90% of the cost away for about 10% of the cost.
Right, amazing. So tell me about InShip. I'd like to know a bit more, and I'm sure our listeners would, particularly around the technology. Now, I'm sure you're not going to give us all the insider stuff, but let's just talk of a typical size organization that might use your systems.
Yeah, so if you take a typical business, and it can be any business, Alec, because we're lucky in the sense that every business in the world gets invoices.
Yeah.
So it's a nice place for me to be, I suppose, given that I'm selling a solution. But typically a business will get a couple of hundred invoices coming into letterbox. Now that would be for products, stock they're purchasing, but there's also the other side. You've all the overhead stuff, your light, your heat, your phone, all of the invoices that are coming in. You can now manually automate the process of dealing with those invoices. So firstly, the paper stops coming in the door. Your suppliers, you ask your suppliers to switch to emailing them in. They email them to a particular address, which is basically InShip. So the invoices come in through our software. We do the heavy lifting in that the invoice is then coded. So these will be your nominal ledger codes, your cost center codes. If you have complexity, let's say, for example, you raise purchase orders, we can match that invoice to the purchase order. We can match the invoice to a GRN, which is a goods received note. The invoice can be routed around the building, or it can be routed internationally, depending on where that invoice needs to be approved and where that manager is sitting. So that could be a branch, or it could be in a different country, perhaps. One of our customers is involved in the aircraft leasing business. So you can imagine the size of their invoices, number one, and number two, the complexity of the approval chain that they would have, because 6 or 8 people have to sign off on the invoice, and they're spread around the globe. So how do you do that efficiently? Well, the only way you can do it efficiently is electronically. And it's a cloud-based system so that you can access the system from anywhere in the world. We even have a mobile device now where you can do this on the move. You can approve your invoices on the move.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, it sounds like a fascinating world. Just before we close up, would you tell people where they can find out more about you and your company, Will?
Sure, Alec. Yeah, the best thing is to hit the website, www.inship.ie. And you pick us up there, all of our contact details there, all of the phone numbers, etc. I'm on LinkedIn myself. If anybody wants to connect up with me or have a look, happy to chat to anybody. We're always keen to talk to people, particularly in the software game, or anybody who's involved in accountancy software, ERP systems, that are looking to buy this technology, because we are, after all, a technology company. So we
Sure.
can actually sell the technology. Apart from selling the product, we will also sell the technology.
Well, all I can say is a special thanks to Will Walsh, and that's WILWALSH of Inship, INSHIP.